Chardonnay and Pinot Noir are made out in the Sonoma coast. It's really beautiful, the view there. It's a lot of coastal influence, so you get that morning fog. The real classic style we like to make for our Chardonnay is to have a cooler climate with more fog, means lower sugars and higher acid. So the acid is in the wine is that really cleanses your palate. And so this goes to as 13 months in French oak barrels, and 60% of those barrels are new. We are starting to use more of the pungents, but at this point we're using mostly the regular 60-gallon barrels. And it stays in there for 13 months. It also undergoes a secondary fermentation called malolactic fermentation. One of the two main acids in wine, which are tartaric and malic, malic being more tart like an apple. Well, it goes through a secondary fermentation conversion called malolactic, which converts the malic acid into lactic acid, bringing off that buttery characteristic. So it brings a little more than a nice viscosity to the wine. We don't want it overly buttery. If you have low acid and you do that conversion, your wine will almost taste oily. Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
We have about 40 acres of Pinot Noir grown there. The shape of the vineyard is a quarter moon, which is why they call it quarter moon. And it's mostly southwest facing slopes. And what you get with southwest facing, I want you all to say that. Southwest facing, it's not easy.
Southwest facing.
Southwest facing slopes. So when we have
Southwest facing slopes. Oh my God. Like,
this one is grown at a little higher elevation than the pastoral vineyard, and it's all the southwest facing slopes, which means it gets more sun exposure. So when the sun's it's getting full sun throughout the day, and even during the sunset, because it's facing towards the ocean. It's also higher elevation, so it's sometimes above the fog line. So we like to grow Pinot Noir in a cooler climate like Sonoma coast area, as well. There's Russian River, Carneros, where again you have that cool climate influence. But we like the Sonoma coast because you always have that morning fog. And up there you also have what's called the Petaluma wind gap. So there's a gap of wind that flows off of the Bodega Bay and flows through the valley all the way down to San Pedro Bay. So you always have about an 8-mile-an-hour speed of wind going through there, which is good because it keeps the grapes dry, so you don't have to worry about mold or mildew because you have that fresh air coming. It also does a little more stressing of those vines, as well as being very rugged terrain right there. So everything's basically done by hand. If you use a tractor, it has to have tracks, not wheels, because the wheels will just slide right down the hill. So 2018 Cabernet, it was a wonderful year. So when we do pruning out here in the vineyard, there's so many dynamics that go into how you make a wonderful wine. You can see now how there's like every 6th, 7th row, there's the flowers that look like lavender, but they're blossoms, I think, from we use different things like buckwheat, legumes, and they call it ground cover. And so we have to start being careful about the water table because we're going into drought. So you want to have some ground that keeps the moisture in the ground, but you don't want so much that it's going to take all the moisture from the vines, because we want to save our pond as long as we can. So there's a lot of things that go into making of the wine, and pruning is one of them. In 2018, we always do 2 canes, 1 cane on each side of a vine, and then each cane has about 8 shoots that come up, and it's on these little shoots that you get the grapes. So we'll go through and we'll thin out the shoots. And that time we were actually thinning out grapes. So we were dropping fruit because there was so much fruit on the vines. And what that did, it really intensifies the fruit that remains. I always compare it to like a vine is like a mama. And first she makes the nest for her babies, which is the canopy of leaves to protect them from the sun, and then create photosynthesis as well. But also, then she has so many babies to feed. If she has too many babies to feed, she's not going to have very healthy babies, right?
Right, exactly.
So if we don't take the babies away. So this is a blend of Cabernet Franc, and Malbec. So 97% is Cabernet, 2% Cab Franc, 1% Malbec. It's also a blend of vineyards.
Wow.
So as you look through the book there, on that little book in the back, it'll show you all the vineyards. So Joseph originally was purchasing grapes from other grape growers, but eventually he started purchasing some of those grapes when those vineyards became available. So the family actually owns those vineyards. It's on the 3rd page. Also sees American oak. This is our only wine in our portfolio that actually sees American oak. That's in our this label, and it's about 50-50 between American and French oak, and about 50-50 of those barrels are new, and some are second year. So be a nice oak program, and we keep them in those barrels for about 18 months.
18 months.
18 months. All right, enjoy. Spill on it, you can't see it. That's nothing. Anyway, and then we have them embossed. It actually has engraved in there. Insignia is in the bottle.
Oh,
And then we also
wow.
put the blend on the back as well. Every year the blend is going to be different.
Right.
Now with labeling laws and rules, there is a law that you have to, if you're doing a Cabernet, it has to be 75% Cabernet.
Right.
There's also no rule if you put the word reserve on the bottle. So when Joe decided he wanted to make a wine every year that was the best the vintage has to offer, he did not want to be handcuffed to those rules. He did not want to make a reserve Cabernet. He wanted to have the best the vintage has to offer. So every vintage would be different based on Mother Nature, the maturity of the vines. And back in those days, he was purchasing his fruit, so it wasn't a lot of that consistency.
Right.
Like where Ashley, our winemaker, she has that opportunity to know a lot of these vineyards and watch them as they grow and mature, and likes this. She knows which blocks, as a rule, are going to be Insignia grade. And then she makes that blend. So after everything's fermented, it goes into barrels. She starts tasting the wines out of these barrels. Sometimes it'll be up to 100 different samples because we have 7 different wineries, 7 different vineyards, and each vineyard could have up to 10 to 20 blocks in each one. So you just look at how many we have here. So she tastes those, she and her associates, and then she gets together a blend. It usually takes about a month and a half. So she gets what she really wants right. The family all gets together. There's a team they all approve and say, yes, that is the best. The vintage, that's awesome. Let's put it in a bottle, or let's put it in a barrel. So we put that, taking those wines, we put them all into brand new French oak barrels. So we have all these wines already blended together. It's in the barrels, and it stays in barrels for 2 years. So after about every 6 months or so, they will take it all out of the barrel, put it into the tank, clean out the barrel, and put them back in. That's called racking, and that really helps clarify in the wine. So this is, I'm sorry, I'm just talking about it and not pouring it. So we use all French oak, which is smoother than American oak, but also we want to mix up those barrels, sometimes 2 and 3 year old barrels. So usually after a barrel's been used 4 years, it'll be considered what's called a neutral barrel. So just the softening of the wine, but without imparting that oak flavor.
Gotcha.
So with this, even though it's 2 years of French oak, we don't consider this an oaky wine, only because of the strength of what's in the glass. So the grapes really do that for you. So this is 2017, a great vintage. Unfortunately, we had the Tubbs firestorm. We lost about 15% of our Cabernet to the smoke taint, as well as our Petit Verdot.
Oh.
So no Petit Verdot in this vintage. 94% Cabernet, 4% Malbec, and 2% Cabernet Franc. 17. This is 2019 futures. So what goes on with this wine is Ashley took the 2019, she and her group made their blend, and they put it into barrels last January, a year ago. It's going to stay in those barrels for another year before it's bottled next February.
Right.
But she took one of those barrels and bottled it this year.
Oh, she did.
So that's what you're going to be drinking right now.
Oh.
So before, in the old days when we could have big parties and we'd just bring a barrel and they'd feed out of the barrel, well, we can't do that anymore because of the 6 feet, the separation.
Yeah.
So last year she did it too. So we actually bottled 1 full barrel, which is 25 cases, and we pour it out here in the tasting room for other guests to enjoy, and then we sell it in futures as well.
Yeah.
You don't get the wine until 2022 in the fall when it's released. But you pay
next year. Yeah.
But you pay a much lesser price because I think the 2019 is going to be $3.30 a bottle before discount. But when you buy it in futures, it's a 30% discount. You pay $2.20 a bottle. So it's a huge difference as far as savings, and you don't have to do that today. We do futures all the way till the end of July. So that's how futures work. You buy it now, and you hope you remember you have it. One night you'll wake up and go, oh shoot, I guess I'm gonna get that 19 pretty soon.